Welcome back to the Mining Pod. Matt and Charlie with myself here again for another news roundup. Today we're going to be talking about the SBF trial. Not really giving you the play-by-play. You can go follow people on Twitter for that or follow it on like Axios or your favorite news source. But you'll get our reactions for 5 or so minutes here. Then we're going to go and talk about Drivechains. There was an op-ed written by 3 Bitcoin miners this week in Bitcoin Magazine. Drivechains, talk of the town. So we're going to talk about that. And then lastly, we'll follow up with Antpool, which is now the largest pool by hash rate. We're going to talk about Antpool and Foundry being the 2 largest Bitcoin mining pools, greater than 50% between the 2 of them, and what this means for Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin mining pools. Did you know that you can make more money by merge mining other networks? Check out makemoremoneymining.com for information on BIPs 300 and 301, a proposal to bring more revenue to Bitcoin miners through sidechains and merge mining called Drivechains. Increase your mining revenues and learn more about participating in Bitcoin governance by visiting makemoremoneymining.com. Are you a miner who wants to activate Bitcoin improvements? Check out Activation.Watch. See what Bitcoin improvements the Bitcoin community, developers, and miners are considering, and show support by signaling for one of many BIPs up for consideration. Activation.Watch. Is your mining operation happening ready? Take control of your own future with the right energy strategy. Lincoin Energy Trading Platform is a tool used by miners to design, monitor, and seamlessly orchestrate sophisticated energy strategies within electricity markets such as ERCOT, New York, and PJM. Avoid penalties, participate in demand response programs, and capture hundreds of thousands of dollars per megawatt per year by deploying the right block and index strategy. Secure your competitive edge at lincoin.com.
Hey Mining Pod, I'm Lee Bratcher, President of the Texas Blockchain Council. The Texas Blockchain Summit is now the North American Blockchain Summit. The same emphasis on policy, energy, and Bitcoin mining, but now expanded by working with our partners across the country. We've got great sponsors lined up like Riot, Marathon, GDA, CleanSpark, BitDeer, Lancium, Cormint, Compass, HTS, Crypto Power, Priority Power, Sonoda, and many more. Solidify your next deal or JV, or just come for the networking on November 15th through 17th in Fort Worth, Texas, for the 3rd annual North American Blockchain Summit. We'll see you there.
Are you a retail or institutional investor interested in Bitcoin mining companies? The Miner Mag brings you free data and analysis from all major NASDAQ-listed Bitcoin mining operations to know who stands out. Check out visualized metrics and data-dependent stories at theminermag.com. Okay, we'll start off with SBF. For the recap, for those who are living under a rock and are just not paying attention to this, bless you if you are, because it's pretty awful stuff. But SBF is in trial this week in New York, and they're bringing up all these things that he's done. There's a lot of witnesses. They selected the jury earlier this week, and it's comprised of like a nurse and someone who used to work in banking, and I think there's like a physician assistant in there. Just a lot of different kind of people on this trial, on this jury, who don't really care about FTX. So that's one interesting note. And then 2, we've seen a lot of people, familiar faces on crypto Twitter and crypto in general, who are a part of this. Matt Wang from Paradigm has been testifying, and then Gary Wang, who was an FTX developer, I believe, and helped implement like the secretive backdoor between FTX and Alameda's there. I'll hand it over to you guys for your takes from what you've seen this week so far. The Gary Wang thing was the most interesting point that I've seen to date, and we can go back over that in a second.
Yeah, Gary Wang, if you remember, about this time last year, it was like November, the conspiracy theories were flying over like, who is this enigmatic Gary Wang figure? We had like 2 pictures of him, one pulled from a news story, one pulled from a website. And I enjoyed going down the conspiracy rabbit hole with everybody else about what this person could mean. And it's interesting that, he's now testifying pretty damningly in the trial as far as what I read. So, the wheels of justice grind slow, but they grind exceedingly fine.
Well put.
That's Plato or Aristotle. I'm not sure.
Or Charlie Spears. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of fun to see all these like characters come out of the woodworks, because for a while this whole story was a mystery. It was like, wow, FTX was clearly a fraud, and like it's clearly tied in with Alameda, and they're spending all the customer funds, and then You see just like Twitter people just like throwing out allegations and prosecuting people on our social media platforms, and you're like, I don't really know what's going on, but now we have a real trial. I wish it was like public and watchable in OJ fashion, and we could all just have our own geek fest watching day by day. But it's neat to see the quotes, right? As you said, Gary Wang basically said that they knew what was going on and that SBF is definitely a fraud. Wild, right? And then, we have people like major characters in the space at Paradigm, as you said, Matt. And then I'm pretty sure the CEO of BlockFi is going to be coming on trial here soon as well.
He's coming back into the spotlight. Zach Prince. We haven't heard from him in a while.
He hasn't tweeted in like a year or something.
I'm sure Caroline Ellison will have to come out of the woodworks at some
Tuesday.
point. Tuesday, there we go. And like, I'm interested to see, like, because some of these characters now, time has passed, and they all have their own legal teams, right? You have to assume they're all kind of probably going to take their own prerogative. There might be some tempers that flare. I'm sure that there's some animosity towards SBF, and he can be a clear scapegoat for a lot of these people to reduce their punishments. And so we'll see what comes out, right? But I'm pretty enthralled with the case thus far.
I think someone has to say it. Wherever is Sam Trabucco? This is the giant.
Where in the world?
The giant question, and it's amazing that he continues to not be a part of the conversation at all. It seems no news stories. There's only the handful of the odd crypto Twitter person who says, "Where's Sam T?" And I mean, yeah, I wonder this too.
He's just going fast over some water. Okay, I'm gonna add this tweet right here. This is from Inner City Press, which they're a great account to follow for financial crimes. This guy literally has like a tiny little office inside the New York District Attorney office area where they prosecute. Like this tiny little office. I don't know how he got this. And so he has frontline information for everything when it comes to these financial crimes. And his tweet here is just going through like the back and forth between the prosecutor and Gary Wang. And the prosecutor asks him, quote, how much did the defendant say Alameda could withdraw? Gary Wang, up to negative $50 to $100 million. How did you hear this? Gary Wang, I was near Sam's desk. In early 2020, I did a database query. Alameda's balance was negative, more than FTX revenue. That is wild. Wild. As of 2020, Alameda Research had a huge hole in its balance sheet, and it was pulling money from FTX all the way back then. That's when FTX was new on the scene, right? Like they were just getting off the ground. A lot of people were interested in them, and already they were running the long con. So I'm with you guys. I'm very interested to see the other participants of Crypto Twitter Past pop onto the stage here and give their information, give their take. Also echo what Charlie was just saying. Where is Sam Trabucco? We have not seen anything from him, and he was also oddly missing from Michael Lewis's newest book, Going Infinite.
When Netflix special? When do we just get like a really well made documentary that goes through like the whole thing?
I think the method actors have to start prepping their cocktails right now, just to get in the right headspace, so that we can have the Christian Bales of the world gain a bunch of weight and be SBF.
Yikes. That'd be very sad. Okay. Best places to watch this, in my opinion. This is just me shilling some friends. Nicholas Day over at CoinDesk. Go follow his Twitter account. CoinDesk is also running like an end of day summary podcast series, which is great just to follow up on. Inner City Press, go follow their Twitter account. They're tweeting out live stuff from the courtroom. So that's great. And then again, Nicholas Day is actually drawing some fantastic images from the courthouse, and he's been putting that into the CoinDesk articles, and they're pretty hilarious. Nick has a new job as a courtroom sketch artist, so congrats to him. Let's leave that topic aside. I'm sure we will return to it next week, perhaps. And let's move over to Bitcoin mining stuff, which is, the purpose of the show. Talk about Bitcoin mining. We have this new op-ed from a few of our favorite Bitcoin miners out there. Amanda Fabiano, Harry Sudduck, Here I'm scrolling up to the top here. And Rory Murray. These are all Bitcoin miners, various places. I think Harry and Rory are both at Grid. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. And then Amanda has just departed from Galaxy Digital to start off her own consulting business. This article goes through Drivechains, BIP 300, 301. They sponsor Activation.Watch and MakeMoreMoneyMining.com, which are advertisers for the show. So there's that. But this op-ed discusses why Bitcoin miners, in their opinion, might be hesitant in supporting Drivechains. The main thrust of it, from my perspective, and I encourage everyone to go read it if you're interested in Drivechains, BIPs, and Bitcoin mining, is that for compliance reasons, sidechains could be a big trouble spot for Bitcoin miners. And two, Bitcoin mining is already a pretty precarious business, and adding any changes to the base layer could harm businesses that are already standing and functioning, and could really destroy that base layer. Charlie, I want to throw this one over to you, get your take on it. Those are the two main points that I dragged out of it. Of course, there's like a lot of other nuanced details in this piece.
Yeah. Again, I'm undecided on Drivechain. I find it one of the more interesting conversations going on, and I do work for a mining pool. And so I don't speak for them. I don't speak for Luxor in this case, but I found this. I do appreciate Bitcoin Magazine's kind of attention from these specific voices. Harry, Amanda, and Rory are well respected in the business. I respect them a lot, and they put together a pretty good description of what I think, like, how does the incentive model from a mining perspective work, and provide good criticism to say Drivechains have a lot of unknown or unproven incentive effects. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I think I have a couple takes from this, among others, but one is like, I really think it's so important to distinguish between block producers and Bitcoin miners, because as this conversation heats up and continues onward, and as more things like this come into the conversation, we're really going to have to distinguish. There are entities like mining pools which produce and construct the blocks. That is where the Drivechain kind of business model would be most probably where it affects them the most. And then there's the miners who produce hash rate. They're more like hash rate producers. And so I think it is a little bit confusing for me to read kind of a breakdown of here's the business lines that miners are have to balance when producing hash rate, because I'm like, well, but you're producing hash rate, you're not actually producing the blocks themselves. And then I also, yeah, I mean, the argument for Drivechains would be, okay, well, block producers can now actually increase their price for purchasing this hash rate, so that would be a pro. There's a lot we can take away from this. I'm just glad that it's now kind of crossed the Rubicon into the conversation has crossed the Rubicon into like mainstream print media, long form discussion, instead of these, God bless Paul, 10-hour long Twitter spaces where it's kind of rambling and confusing. So I do look forward to more people and miners chiming in, miners and block producers chiming in longer written form, kind of more thought out pieces.
One other thing I want to throw in there before I hand it over to Matt. Another point they make in here is about who's the decision maker. It kind of follows up on what Charlie's point, right? Like if you're a Bitcoin miner and you don't have the ability to opt out, well, then you become almost like a dispute resolution center, right? For all these sort of things that could happen on a side chain, and miners don't want to become that. Now, pools are somewhat in the business of doing that already, not too much because there's not that much going on, but you have seen past historical instances where that has been the case. And to Amanda's and these other two authors' points, they don't want the base layer to change from being this neutral settlement layer. They want it to be the same. Matt, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, you just make an interesting point there, because Bitcoin has a kind of precedent of making any changes opt-in, and if you don't want to make those changes, you're not penalized for not doing so. That's an interesting point, but I definitely commend these authors for coming out and doing a thoughtful op-ed about this stuff, right? Also, to hear the miner perspective, right? Now, they're not speaking for everybody, but as miners, it's an important view. Bitcoin consensus, it's a balance of powers. There are many different roles and important people that make up Bitcoin politics, right? You have people that run nodes, you have miners. To your point, Charlie, you can even separate out pools as another kind of different political kind of faction, right? You have holders, you have businesses, and now even you could talk about kind of the L2 space as being kind of another emerging voice that has an opinion on base layer changes. I think that this is like a fun topic to discuss. At this point, I don't have like a hard and fast stance on it, but I think there would need to be a lot more demand out there amongst people generally for drive chains to really cause the conversation to become more serious. I think right now it's a fun topic to talk about, as are all sorts of different soft fork proposals. But as we stand, I mean, getting opinions out there, having people research more of the implications and what it would actually do for Bitcoin as a whole, it's the right approach, right? This is the Bitcoin way. You research, it goes slow. These things take time. See major protocol changes in the past, right? As an example, SegWit, Taproot, right? Even P2SH.
The Bitcoin way. Write about it, talk about it, shitpost about it, and maybe
Podcast about it.
Yeah,
become podcasting about it.
Yeah.
Matt, you just came up with a great like Bitcoin mining newsletter name there too. A miner's perspective. That's good. That has like a little play on words there. Okay, I want to go back to one point about this, get some responses from you guys, and then we'll move on to the last topic, which again is Antpool and Foundry. The issue I had with this piece specifically was that it was almost wanting to be anti-change in Bitcoin because it didn't want to change the Bitcoin mining business model for both the business reasons and the compliance reasons. At the same time, we are seeing like a shift in Bitcoin where there's people who are pushing for Bitcoin to have assets on layer twos, whether it be Terra or whatever they changed their name to recently, or ZK rollups. So we're seeing with Taproot Wizards kind of things and a few other teams around that, or even seeing with ordinals and inscriptions. I think like that world is quickly coming to Bitcoin, whether they like it or not, in a lot of different ways. And yet Bitcoin miners are still thinking, oh, we need to be compliant. We need to operate in this world where Bitcoin doesn't have multiple assets. Because I do think that there's a future where Bitcoin settlement mining does have to decide what is what and what is right and what is correct. And I think that it'd be ignorant to not look at those things and say, hey, we need to start preparing for that future. BIP 300, 301 might be the wrong construction. It might not be the right design for this. But I think to not like look at these things and have an interest in seeing how Bitcoin mining incentives are going to change is sticking your head in the sand. So that's my take on it.
I share a similar view. I think block construction of Bitcoin is headed towards a very interesting era of evolution. So look up and see the changes and figure out, be the change you want to see in the network.
Be the change. And I don't know if Rory, Harry, and Amanda would actually disagree with that at all. But from reading the piece, that's the take I got, was like they were more focused on compliance and keeping businesses steady than necessarily like keeping up with innovation.
Well, I think there's change within the confines of the consensus rules as to what's valid. And so there's using the current rules to do different kinds of new things. And then there's also change of the consensus rules kind of themselves, right? Or I guess like tacking on to them in the case of a soft fork. And so I think that there's like a distinction that kind of needs to be made there. And as far as compliance goes, right, there's compliance in the US, there's compliance in other emerging markets and other developed markets and developing markets. And if there's an opportunity to do something elsewhere that is more profitable, Bitcoin is an open protocol. You can do things from anywhere. And if that gives you some kind of like regulatory arbitrage, that is open. And that's totally feasible, and that will be the way. And so also, like, you come into like questions about where's the line between, I mean, compliance is kind of a nice way to say it, but you can kind of flip that around and say censorship as well, right? If you're not allowed to do certain things. But I don't think the authors were necessarily talking about it from that perspective at all. But I would draw the distinction between change with how you're using the consistent rules, right, and change of the rules, right, are two different things.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I do think it's important for people in the Bitcoin ecosystem to realize that there's a huge amount of hash rate that is now publicly listed and now has to think about compliance first and foremost. And those compliance rules aren't necessarily going to align with Bitcoin. Bitcoin should be about users. Bitcoin should be about banking the unbanked. A lot of the things I've actually shifted to the Ethereum discourse, Bitcoin should take back, in my opinion. And I think that could be at odds with a lot of the public sector, which is more focused on like staying in line with the federal government. And I think like if we like stray away from that and we don't build things because we're worried about the public miners, things like that, that's an issue. And it also is a huge market loss, right? In stable coins, a lot of people are worried about stable coins on top of Bitcoin for many reasons. Well, it looks like stable coins are being adopted, like PayPal's launching their own one, right? So the US government maybe didn't like them at a certain point, but now they're being adopted, and that's a huge market loss that could have been built on Bitcoin. I guess you can argue about the construction, stuff like that, but I think if you shy away from that, you lose things. Okay, any other thoughts from that before we go on to the last subject?
I think we're just getting started talking about this. I think if this pod runs for the next 5-10 years, we'll always have some kind of hot take of the day or some rabbit hole to go down on Drivechains or BIP3, any BIP after 300. So yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, I think so too. Let's go to the last subject. Oh, I actually don't have something to show. Never mind.
Well,
I
if
was
you
lying.
want me to throw the subject out there, you're going to say Antpool. I'm going to float the Luxor, talking my bags here. We we are behind the lava pool for El Salvador. Shout out. That's a fun story of the week. El Salvador's got their own national mining
I do
pool
have that.
now. Isn't this the game theory you always wanted? You know, the nation state pool game theory.
Very nice. Okay, so tell us about this, and then let's go into like the Antpool Foundry thing that happened this week.
Yeah, I mean, we worked with El Salvador to white label kind of their own mining pool. This actually goes into a whole kind of idea, which is some products we do, but then also just overall what I think would be good practices for a country who wants to get into this. So we're going to combine this with some of our derivative products for them to hedge their hash rate, but then also like look at, towards the bottom of that article, I think it's very important to note that there's 20 some odd % of the revenues from the mining pool which are theoretically going back into investment in the country on the infrastructure and energy side. I think that's not to be discounted too much, because what's the purpose of a national mining pool? It's to kind of provide revenue just like other activities. So I look at that and I'm like, this is cool. This is a country who wants to innovate in Bitcoin, not be extractive, and then use that emerging technology to reinvest back into the core infrastructure of the country. So Luxor's happy to be part of that.
Nice. Nick should give me some money for doing a little PR angle for you guys.
Yeah. Well, maybe El Salvador.
I'll send you an invoice. Oh, I should bill El Salvador.
Yeah.
That's what I'll bill. Okay, let's go over to Antpool then. And I pulled up the graphic. So our mempool.space, great resource as always. And we're mainly here looking just like at Foundry and Antpool. Antpool as of today is now a larger hash rate dominance than Foundry. That could move back and forth, of course, because that is typically what happens, especially when we have two large competing pools. And we've seen this in the past where there's been two large competing pools and they're get around the same percentage. They just bounce back and forth depending on how lucky they are. But the main gist of this is that Antpool is now slightly bigger. Foundry Pool is already big, and together they make up more than 50% of Bitcoin's hash rate, which a lot of people have concerns about that. Even if there's unlikely something to happen, something could happen, and that would hurt Bitcoin, the asset, and that would hurt Bitcoin, the network. Matt, I want to throw this topic over to you. I think it is something that is beaten to death quite often, but it's not every day that you have 2 pools get this size.
This may be like the longest standing Bitcoin FUD out there, honestly. Like you can trace back to the Bitcoin Talk forum. In like at the beginning of pools, people concerned about the famed 51% attack. And I guess like in that, like to take a historical view, right? Pools getting this big is nothing new. In fact, pools have had greater share of block production in the past. BTC Guild, Deepbit, ghash.io, right? These are and there was a time even where like 3 fairly large pools in total, one of which may have been the largest pool at the time, were all owned by Bitmain, right? And that was like another concern. I guess like to blanket assuage the concerns here, I would say that there has never been a successful attack by a pool to my knowledge, or that I've really heard out there, nor do I honestly ever expect one. I think it's something that's kind of like fun to theoretically talk attack vectors. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't when it comes to Bitcoin. That's part of what makes it so resilient and robust, is that people out there are trying to think of different ways where Bitcoin could have problems. But I think this one has been heavily researched. And I think the fact that miners themselves can basically run a node and see what chain they're hashing to, and then they're also all in the same economic interest of Bitcoin actually doing well. I think the concerns here are really kind of mute. But again, fun to talk about in our armchairs on a podcast. So I'll toss it over to Charlie.
Yeah, I agree. I think Matt's totally right. I remember Ghash being a whole big deal, and that was my trial by fire into understanding the mechanics of the 51% attack, which I think is the most overrated attack vector for Bitcoin, mainly because it's just very broadly understood, and it's a fun kind of simple concept to talk about at parties, to be like, hey, this is an interesting idea of how Bitcoin's resilient. But I just like to see pools. I like to see the pool business shake up. So Foundry's had the number 1 spot for a long time. I like to see new number 1s, even if it is a very old pool. I like it when the industry grows and evolves. Whether it's Antpool, and someday maybe it's Luxor, who knows? So yeah,
Maybe.
This is a fun story. I think it's interesting. I think it actually, one of the big narratives I pull out of is that China has bounced back, because a lot of this is like Chinese hash rate and the
diaspora.
Yeah, the diaspora of Chinese hash rate and mind share now back at the top in number 1. So I think that's not to be discounted.
Definitely not.
The
So
hash rate
I don't know
arms race is accelerating again.
Yeah.
US, China,
East versus West. Was it for the digital energy? Or
I
what's
didn't know
that guy's like?
Sorry, go ahead, Will.
No, what's that guy's thing? Like the S9 is an AK-47 of mining, and there's like digital energy.
Yeah,
digital
Jason
wall.
Lowry. It's the S9. It's the uranium of Bitcoin mining or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if he has any thoughts on this East versus West.
I don't know. You have to buy his $25,000 book.
Yeah. Yikes. Okay, so I don't know if I'm using this word correctly, but there's perhaps a juxtaposition here with the Ethereum community, where they're dealing with something called Lido. Lido is a DAO that enables people to stake Ether and get a token for staking that Ether. And that stake is supposed to act similar to mining, where you put this stake into a smart contract and it validates the network, much like miners plug a box into the wall and it sends transactions around. So there's this thing happening with Lido right now where they have too much stake. in the eyes of a lot of the core developer community. And now the core developer community is calling on people who are in Lido to move to other staking providers. The reason being, if you have a stake that's too large, it can hurt the consensus of the network. You can have MEV attacks on Ethereum. You can have cartelization of the block space where people who are involved with Lido get better rates or get better rewards than people who are self-staking. And after a certain threshold, 50% or even higher, you get to a point where Lido or another entity, if it got that big, would be able to censor the blockchain. Very different situations here, but I do think it's kind of funny that in Bitcoin right now, we're not seeing anyone really talk about Foundry and Antpool get this size, but we are seeing it in Ethereum community, like almost a mini social civil war going on at the moment, where there's a lot of frustration and a lot of like mudslinging. I guess the reason being is to what Matt said, like this is like very old FUD in Bitcoin, and most people are dismissive of it right now. But the Lido situation is quite new, and there is probably more attack vectors with the Lido situation than this.
Yeah, it's also harder to add like I mean you got the eigenlayer on top of ETH, and you have the various types of liquid staking, and we haven't yet had a similar analogous market evolve on Bitcoin. Maybe there will evolve such a market with the various derivative products that are coming out, but more complexity, more attack vectors, more news cycles, more things to talk about on mining pods.
Lots to talk about. It's not necessarily ASICs or energy, but it is a part of Bitcoin mining. So we delve into it when there's not a lot of news going on. Okay, we'll leave it there. You guys got anything fun going on this weekend?
Weather is beautiful here in Oklahoma for the first time in months. And so all the ASICs across the state are operating at peak efficiency right now, which is great after a very hot and hard summer. And I am probably going to go light a fire on the patio tonight. So, yeah.
Nice.
A cold front has come through Austin, Texas. It is now only 80 degrees. So
I got a sweatshirt, baby.
That's right.
It's 50 degrees out here in Denver right now.
You can see us. You can see
cold.
going from like Will, the furthest north, Charlie in the geographic middle, and Matt in the center, or down the south.
Perfect.
So you can see us like with our increasingly, warm clothing.
We'll have to start doing weather reporting as part of this.
Hey, it's hash rate trading based on weather reporting. We talked about this. It gets hot in Texas.
I have actually thought about that. Yeah,
it gets hot in Texas.
Done like a little weather angle just for like Bitcoin miners, but like this is what's happening here. But
get a meteorologist on the show to talk about how hot July 2024 is going to be. Short those futures.
We'll start reading the tea leaves of the Farmer's Almanac.
It's a thing. I know miners who do that. I would probably lose subscribers to the show though, because it might get too boring. Speaking of which closed us down for the weekend. Thank you both for joining. If you enjoyed the show, give us a 5-star review, subscribe to our Substack. You can find it in today's show notes, and give us a thumbs up and subscription on YouTube. See you next week. Bye.